Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back thousands of years to a land of sultry desert nights, golden sands, and the slow, eternal sigh of the Nile. Yes, it's ancient Egypt, and you, my friend, are about to be the accidental hero of a romance that's been waiting for you since the pyramids were just sparkly ideas on a royal sketchpad. Picture yourself, you're dressed in a loose linen tunic, the air smells of mud and sweet palm sap, and even the moon can't decide whether to shimmer on the river or hide behind a cloud. You're here to soak in all the awkward flirting, sly gossip, and sleepy stories of love that once filled these dusty nights. Though let's be honest, you probably won't survive this climate without at least one bout of sunburn, a tangle with a mosquito, and a face full of sand. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift your weight on a woven mat, its edges scratching your ankles while a slow, warm breeze crawls over the Nile's surface. All around the night is alive with the chirp of cicadas and the occasional grunt from a restless hippo, lurking just offshore, Egypt's version of a guard dog, if guard dogs could swallow you whole and still look adorable to ancient kids. There's the city Memphis, ancient capital whose name is not yet synonymous with Elvis or blue suede shoes, but instead with the soft glow of oil lamps dotting the shoreline and the gentle chime of distant music. The Nile isn't just a river, it's the cosmic artery of life here. By day, it sparkles, by night, it sighs. The banks are crowded with palms and thick reeds that sometimes look suspiciously like they're waving at you. Every so often, a breeze pushes the scent of water and silt up into your nostrils, mixing with something richer, a whiff of baked bread, or roasting duck drifting from a household nearby. You're not alone, of course. Egyptians love the night when the day's heat collapses into a cozy warmth, perfect for, well, everything except doing your taxes. Tonight, the city is stretching into dusk streets, thinning out except for a few market stalls hanging on to the last flickers of business. You spot a woman arranging blue lotus blossoms in a shallow clay bowl, flowers so famous for their dreamy fragrance that poets have compared them to the gentle touch of a lover. In fact, those very petals, when steeped in wine, were rumored to relax the body in ways that even the local priests might find a little too exciting. Historians still argue whether blue lotus was a true narcotic or just an ancient version of mood lighting. You pass by a cluster of children chasing each other, shrieking with laughter, one holding a crooked palm frond like a heroic sword. Their mothers gossip in soft melodic voices about the neighbor who's definitely hiding something behind those papyrus blinds, standard neighborly suspicion. The air is thick with stories, and every wall seems to hold a secret, from quick glances exchanged across a market stall to the heavy golden laughter of old couples who've survived so many seasons they probably have matching sunspots. In the courtyard of a modest mud brick house, you see a young man, call him Comet, pacing with the nervousness of a cat near a basket of fish. He's clutching a small folded scrap of papyrus. His fingers twitch. He glances up at a second-story window where a curtain flutters, perhaps intentionally. Love even here is an awkward, gangly thing, all elbows and hopeful grins. Somewhere nearby, the distant notes of a sistrum, a kind of ancient Egyptian rattle, echo over the rooftops. It's a party, or maybe a small wedding, though honestly, in Egypt, there's hardly any difference between the two. You catch the scent of perfume on the wind, something sharp and sweet, a concoction of myrrh, cinnamon, and what might just be a dash of old sandalwood. Fun fact, Egyptians took their fragrances so seriously that Cleopatra herself was said to have scented the sails of her boat to announce her arrival, a move historians still debate was either seductively brilliant or just really extra. Back on the street, you shuffle past a merchant hawking trinkets and jewelry cowrie shell bracelets, copper rings, and amulets shaped like tiny scarabs. For luck, he promises winking, like he's got a direct line to the gods. You're tempted to ask if he sells amulets for surviving first dates, but you bite your tongue. The city never quite sleeps. Not entirely. Even as the night deepens, the sounds, shift frogs begin their evening chorus, and occasionally, from farther upriver, you hear the mournful wail of a herdsman coaxing his cattle. If you listen closer, another sound filters through the gentle splash of oars dipping into water. You stroll along the quayside, marveling at how the stones still radiate the day's heat beneath your bare feet. Here on the dock, lovers sometimes meet to exchange secrets, or at least practice the art of looking mysterious. There's a certain etiquette to this, a whole system of glances, nods, and if you're really daring, the faintest brush of fingertips beneath the shadows. Don't worry, you're not expected to be suave. Most Egyptians, if the surviving poetry is any evidence, were either hopeless romantics or professional overthinkers. One surviving love poem reads, "My heart thought of my love of you so deeply, I could not sleep." So basically, insomnia has always been trending. Out on the water, boats drift lazily, their hulls painted with simple geometric patterns. Couples lounge amid cushions and baskets of food, whispering about life dreams and occasionally crocodile-related anxieties. The moon glints off the ripples, turning the Nile's surface into a shifting sheet of silver. It's all very romantic, assuming you're not the type to get seasick. As you meander further from the city's bustle, the noise softens. In the distance, the pyramids of Giza rise like enormous shadows, proof that no matter how epic your love story, someone will always try to upstage you with a giant tomb. Some say the pyramids were built by armies of enslaved laborers, but historians still argue whether that's true or just an early case of bad press. What is certain, the people who built them probably fell in love, got into arguments, and dreamed about soft beds and sweeter bread, just like you. You find yourself wandering a palm-lined path toward the river's edge. The mud is cool beneath your toes, softening the calluses from days spent walking sun-baked stone. Fireflies dot the darkness, winking in and out of view. One lands briefly on your hand, a tiny glowing reminder that even the smallest sparks are noticed here. A distant drumbeat pulses in the background. You realize someone somewhere is probably getting married, or maybe they're just having a good time. Egyptians were famous for their love of music and dance, and parties often spilled out into the streets. If you're lucky, you'll catch a glimpse of a bridal procession complete with clapping, singing, and the ancient equivalent of the chicken dance. As you linger in this night, the world narrows down to the gentle hum of insects, the rhythmic lap of water, and the faint scent of onions wafting from a farmer's cart. Romance here is less about grand gestures and more about sharing a melon slice, swapping bad jokes, and surviving another sweltering day together. You glance up at the sky where the stars are crowded into a dizzying, impossible blanket. Ancient Egyptians believed these were the souls of the departed sparkling in the night. Sometimes couples would sneak out to make wishes, although to be fair, the wishes were probably divided between eternal love and please, Osiris, make the mosquitoes go away. As the night grows even softer, you sit beside the river, listening to the gentle snore of a sleeping heron. Somewhere behind you, a pair of lovers giggles, their voices rising and falling like the river itself. You lie back, close your eyes, and let the ancient warmth seep into your bones. A warm Nile night has truly begun, and like countless dreamers before you, you're here for every sleepy moment, every whispered secret, every joke about crocodile dung sunscreen. Yes, that was a thing. And yes, historians still debate whether it worked or just gave everyone spectacularly bad skin. For now, you relax the ancient world humming softly around you and let yourself drift gently into this sleepy story of love and life beside the endless river. You stir rolling over on the woven mat, the hum of the river still threading its way through your dreams. Tonight there's a subtle change in the air, a delicious promise of possibility. You shuffle to your feet, brushing stray papyrus fibers from your knees, and wander toward the riverbank. The Nile is wide and mysterious under the velvet sky, flecked with moonlight. It calls you like an old friend, inviting you closer, promising cool relief and perhaps a little ancient intrigue. Down at the water's edge, you notice an unusual congregation of canoes bobbing gently. Not the grand barges reserved for gods or pharaohs, but slender wooden vessels, simple hand-painted, patched with the loving care of owners who treat their canoes like a firstborn child, or at least like a very expensive sandal. You pause, catching the scent of fresh water and the sweet tang of blue lotus blossoms. The air here is richer, heavier, with something heady woven into it, desire mischief, or maybe just that unique Egyptian cocktail of heat, humidity, and hope. A group of young couples flits in and out of the canoes, each pair glowing with the unmistakable giddiness of new romance. Girls in linen dresses, their hair perfumed and wound in delicate plaits, wave lotus flowers like parade queens. Boys, some nervous, some pretending they aren't, gently help them into the boats, and the water rocks with laughter. There's a competitive edge to it. Who can pick the largest lotus? Who can get their canoe to glide the straightest? Who can look the most nonchalant when the vessel inevitably veers left-right or just circles like a confused crocodile? You remember that blue lotus last night, its petals floating in wine, making everyone feel as relaxed as if they'd just had a very good foot massage? Historians still argue whether it actually had a psychoactive kick or whether the ancient poets just had vivid imaginations and very few hobbies. Tonight, it's definitely the social glue, each canoe carrying a bouquet, each young hopeful tucking a blossom behind an ear or into a belt, as if that would guarantee success in the complicated game of love. A nearby canoe is especially overloaded, 3 boys and 2 girls squished together in a way that makes you wince for their future chiropractors. The boys try to out-paddle each other, but the canoe spins wildly, drawing laughter from the banks. Next time you hear one of the girls giggle, maybe just let the river take us. It's an old joke, apparently, but the kind that never gets old when the moon is high and your heart is skipping. Further down, another boat glides serenely, a young couple sitting so close their knees touch. They're sharing a quiet conversation too low for you to hear, but easy enough to imagine secrets, confessions, maybe some ancient version of "Do you like me? Check yes or no." You can tell by their posture, the shy smiles, the way their hands fidget with the rim of the boat, that this is no casual ride. These are the nerves of 2 people hoping to be each other's story, at least until the next harvest festival comes around, and everyone changes dance partners. Someone tosses a lotus flower into the water. It floats alongside the boat, spinning in gentle eddies. The sight is both romantic and practical. After all, what better way to show off your affection than by littering the river with fragrant proof? The lotus symbol of rebirth and beauty means everything here. You wonder how many crushes have started or ended with the casual gift of a single blue bloom. You also wonder how many sneaky hippopotamuses have snacked on the evidence. A little further from shore, an older couple paddles slowly, their rhythm perfectly matched. They don't talk much, don't need to. They're content in the silence, the gentle slap of water against wood, the knowledge that love doesn't always require grand declarations or the courage to recite poetry. Sometimes it's just enough to share a canoe, a sunset, and a comfortable silence broken only by the occasional splash from an enthusiastic fish. A few canoes down, a group of friends are less interested in romance than in water shenanigans. One boy stands up balancing with a showman's swagger arm spread like a stork. He bows, wobbles, and inevitably splashes into the water, drawing applause and a few half-hearted warnings about river crocodiles. Don't worry, someone laughs. The crocodiles are probably too busy flirting to notice you. You make a mental note. Ancient Egyptian river dates come with a side of slapstick and probably a higher-than-average risk of losing your sandals. You settle down on the bank, the grass tickling your calves, and take in the floating parade. The river is now alive with lanterns, small clay pots fitted with oil-soaked wicks set adrift to create a constellation of flickering light. The effect is magical, as if the stars have come down for a swim. Couples paddle among them, casting long shadows and whispering to each other. Occasionally, a lantern tips, spilling a tiny ribbon of smoke. There's a superstition that if your lantern burns to the end without going out, your love will last at least another season, maybe even longer, if you bribe the local priest with a decent bottle of beer. You overhear a cluster of elders chuckling at the spectacle. Ah, to be young and reckless with your lotus budget, one says, shaking his head, and your sense of balance. Another, more sentimental sighs. We did it too, though back then the river was colder and the lanterns lasted longer. Historians still debate whether the Nile was really colder back then, or whether nostalgia has always made everything seem more dramatic, more golden, and less full of mosquito bites. The riverbank isn't all romance, though. A few parents linger in the shadows, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, pretending not to watch their children, but absolutely keeping score. One mother tries to look indifferent as her daughter receives a lotus from a particularly ambitious suitor, but her foot taps a rhythm of barely contained excitement or possibly irritation. Parenting hasn't changed that much in 4,000 years. A group of girls not yet interested in the canoeing boys weave flower crowns from reeds and lotus stems. They gossip in sing-song voices about whose brother is most likely to tip his boat, who has the prettiest sandals, and whether it's true that the scribe's apprentice is writing a love poem for that girl with the golden earrings. You catch snatches of speculation, exaggerated sighs, and the occasional historians still argue whether he actually likes her or just her dad's herd of goats. You get the sense that these rituals, the flowers, the floating lanterns, the moonlit races have happened here for generations. The Egyptians took their festivals seriously, and every detail meant something: the timing of the moon, the shape of the boats, the kind of music echoing from the village. Some nights, the entire community would join making offerings to Hathor, goddess of love and joy. Other times, it was just a handful of teenagers and a nervous turtle pretending not to be in the way. Tonight there's music, a low rhythmic thumping of drums, the lilting wail of a double-pipe flute. Someone sings a love song slightly off-key, but full of feeling. My heart is in your hands. The chorus goes like a bird in a golden cage. You try not to laugh at the earnestness of it, but let's be honest, ancient pickup lines haven't aged much better than that one shirt you keep in the back of your closet just in case. A quick aside, in ancient Egypt, musicians were often women, and some became celebrities in their own right. One famous lady, known as "She Who Is Foremost in the House of Rejoicing," played for queens and priests alike. Historians still debate whether she invented the world's first stage dive or if she just tripped over her own lyre. As the night deepens, the festival energy softens. Some canoes drift aimlessly, couples leaning on each other, half asleep. The lanterns thin out as a soft mist creeps in from the marshes, blurring the line between water and sky. Even the most determined romantics begin to yawn, their lotus bouquets drooping. A frog lets out a comically loud croak, as if reminding everyone it's almost bedtime. You stand and stretch, watching the last few canoes paddle home, the boys splashing water in a final act of bravado. On the far shore, a fisherman waves his silhouette etched against the faint outline of the pyramids. He's been there all evening, casting his net and occasionally humming to himself. Some say a fisherman's song is a lucky omen for lovers, a blessing whispered over the river's restless heart. Before you turn to go, you spot one last lotus flower spinning slowly in an eddy near the bank. You pluck it from the water, its petals cool and slick. Will you give it to someone, tuck it behind your ear, or just keep it a fragrant secret from a night on the Nile? The answer, as with so much in love, is yours alone. In love. Back in your mat, the river's music lulls you. The scent of lotus clings to your fingers, and somewhere a pair of lovers makes their way home, hand in hand, under the gaze of ancient stars. You close your eyes, lotus petals pressed between your palms, and listen as the Nile flows on ancient eternal, always carrying with it new stories of romance and gentle mischief. You wake with a slow stretch papyrus mat creaking beneath your back, and for a moment you're not sure if the gentle clatter in the distance is a real sound or the tail end of a half-dreamed festival. The Nile's riverbank is quiet, except for the soft swish of reeds in the early breeze. But then your ear catches it, the hush-hush flutter of palace gossip swirling from open windows and shaded courtyards. You wander through the winding, sun-baked lanes toward the city's heart, drawn by the invisible current of secrets. Here behind ochre walls painted with faded hieroglyphics, the real business of ancient romance begins, not on the river, not in the lotus-lit haze, but right here in Memphis's palatial maze, where every stone seems to echo with the click of sandals and the whispered words of would-be lovers. You're not really supposed to be here, but like any good time traveler or nosy neighbor, sometimes you have to let curiosity lead the way. You sidle past a pair of guards who look like they're competing for most impressive beard 1330 BCE. They barely glance at you, too absorbed in a heated debate about whether the vizier's daughter is secretly dating her scribe. Historians still argue whether she prefers poets or warriors, one says, scratching his chin. You stifle a laugh and slide inside. The palace is a labyrinth of colonnades and half-lit halls. The air is thick with incense, a little overpowering if you're honest, like someone tried to cover up a royal kitchen disaster with 3 pounds of frankincense. You sidestep a servant hurrying by with a tray of honey cakes. He's mouthing a prayer to Bastet, goddess of cats and household drama. Another servant sweeps the flagstones, pausing to eavesdrop on a pair of giggling maids whispering about last night's moonlit canoes. Did you see how he tripped getting out of the boat? One cackles. So graceful, like a startled goose in a storm. Even the palace walls have heard it all. You duck into a sun-drenched courtyard where a group of young nobles has gathered. They sit in a loose circle, lazily flicking pebbles and sipping watered wine. One of them, a scribe's apprentice named Nebet, is nervously clutching a reed pen and an unrolled scrap of papyrus. You recognize the look. He's working up the courage to compose a love letter for the noble girl sitting across from him who is pretending very badly not to watch him. It's a performance as old as time. You sit in the shade, arms folded, and let the scene unfold. Nebet dips his pen, hesitates, and finally scratches out a few clumsy lines. His friend leans over, peeks at the papyrus, and bursts out laughing. You wrote, "Your face is like a fattened duck. Try again, Nebet." Apparently, ancient pickup lines needed workshopping too. Fun historical fact, Egyptians took written communication seriously, especially for love. Archaeologists have found entire troves of love letters carved on ostraca shards of pottery, testament to a culture where feelings ran deep, but writing supplies were often in short supply. Many letters began with flowery flattery. "You are the only one for me, my lotus, my bread, my beer." No one could accuse these romantics of subtlety. Historians still debate whether the best lines came from the heart or from a particularly well-read donkey somewhere in Upper Egypt. Meanwhile, the noble girl, let's call her Mary, pretends to be fascinated by the carving on her bracelet, but her cheeks give her away. She's blushing possibly from the heat, possibly from the attention, but most likely because Nebet's latest draft reads, "I wish to be the ointment on your skin." You can almost hear her mother's scandalized gasp echoing through the generations. Palace intrigue thrives on these little dramas. The queen's handmaiden passes by, arms full of laundry, and pauses to listen. She shakes her head, muttering, "Last week, he wrote the same to another girl. He needs new material." You wonder if Nebet's love life would benefit from a modern search engine or just a subscription to Ancient Flirts Monthly. Suddenly, you're swept up in a tide of excitement. Everyone in the courtyard is craning their necks toward the main hall, where a scroll-bearer has arrived from Thebes. He's here to deliver news of the heart of the royal family's favorite code for juicy romantic updates. Couriers were the original group chats carrying whispers from palace to palace. If you ever thought your private texts were secure, just remember in Egypt, everyone's love life was someone else's business. The scroll is unrolled with great ceremony. The message delivered in careful script is half political report, half high school diary entry. The Princess of Thebes favors the general's son, it announces, though she is not alone in her affections, and the general's son remains entirely oblivious. The nobles sigh and shake their heads, enjoying the show. Historians still argue whether the princess ever confessed or if her feelings vanished like the morning mist. After the commotion, Mary finally looks Nebet in the eye. Next time she says quietly, "Maybe just speak," instead of writing. It's a small moment, but you feel the weight of it, the ancient universal fear of rejection mixed with hope. Nebet nods embarrassed, but you sense he'll try again. Love here is a messy public, sometimes hilarious endeavor. You wander onward, passing a group of women weaving garlands from fresh jasmine and marigold. They're chattering about a grand ball scheduled for the next full moon, planning what to wear, whom to avoid, and whether anyone can top last year's cat-themed hair braids. The palace dogs sprawl in patches of sunlight, completely uninterested in human affairs, unless, of course, a stray sausage comes within reach. You duck into a cool, shadowed hallway where the vizier himself is engaged in the world's slowest game of Senet, the ancient board game of kings and romantics with too much time on their hands. His opponent, a clever-eyed woman of the court, teases him about his hopeless crush on a certain royal baker. "Your pastries are always shaped like hearts." She laughs, and the vizier blushes deep red, mumbling something about coincidence. You make a mental note, never trust a baker who puts too much effort into themed desserts. Out in the gardens, you see a familiar sight. Two servants bent over a cluster of hieroglyphs carved into the stone bench. They're trying to decode a hidden message. Sure, it's a love note left by an earlier pair of secret admirers. It's not just idle fun. Many Egyptians believed that words carved in stone carried power, and lovers sometimes left their own graffiti for posterity. Archaeologists still argue whether half the surviving inscriptions are declarations of love or just really angry Yelp reviews about the kitchen staff. A sudden squawk interrupts your reverie. A palace goose, notorious for chasing anyone who gets too close to her nest, takes a shine or a dislike to you. You leap back, nearly colliding with an elderly eunuch who grins and says she only chases those with secrets to hide. You glance over your shoulder, wondering what she thinks you're hiding. Maybe a half-finished love letter, maybe just a guilty fondness for honey cakes. You pause at a balcony overlooking the river. Below, you spot a familiar scene. A scribe, perhaps Nebbit, or someone just as awkward standing on tiptoe beneath a window, reading a note aloud. His audience, a woman silhouetted by lamplight, leans in, listening, her face unreadable. The scribe stumbles over his words, nearly dropping the scroll, and you can't help but root for him, if only because you know how hard it is to put yourself out there, even across the centuries. A final detail for tonight's palace story: Egyptians loved nicknames and pet names, sometimes delightfully odd. My little fig, my sweet honey bee, my spotted catfish. Romance here wasn't always dignified, but it was always heartfelt. Historians still debate whether these pet names were genuine endearments or just ancient ways to tease your sweetheart into rolling their eyes. You step back into the street palace, whispers trailing after you. A gentle breeze stirs the palm trees. The last rays of sun paint the sky ochre and gold, and the world feels alive with all the messy, glorious, and very human business of love. If nothing else, tonight proves that romance, awkward letters, whispered secrets, and all has always been a palace specialty as old as the Nile and just as unpredictable. You stroll away, half expecting to trip over a stray papyrus scroll, and realize that here in ancient Egypt, every wall and window is a front row seat to the next great love story or the next great comedy of romantic errors. You slip out of the palace, the murmur of gossip still clinging to your tunic like stubborn dust, and let your feet carry you along the shaded paths winding through Memphis. The night is deepening, and the city's perfumes begin to bloom, layer upon layer, sweet and musky, sharp and soft, wafting from doorways, courtyards, and the open-air shops of spice merchants, still packing up for the evening. The air seems almost alive, a living tapestry of aroma that tells you as much about love in ancient Egypt as any scroll or love letter ever could. You pause outside a bustling apothecary, where a gray-bearded merchant grinds resins and petals with a stone pestle. His shelves are crowded with tiny amphorae, each promising to transform your luck in love, if not in body odor. You watch as a young woman purchases a vial of jasmine oil, her coins clinking softly. A dab on the wrists, one behind each ear, and he'll follow you like a lost puppy. The merchant winks. She laughs, and you do too, because even 4,000 years ago, people wanted an edge in the dating game. Fragrance was serious business here. Egyptian perfumers were legendary, part chemist, part artist, part secret keeper. You move on, letting the merchant's pitch drift away, and breathe in the mingled scents of myrrh, cinnamon, frankincense, and what you suspect is just a hint of goat. Men and women alike doused themselves in oils, not just to mask the fact that bathing was a sometimes thing, but because every scent told a story. The right perfume could mean, I love you, I'm wealthy, or I found this in a tomb, and I'm hoping for the best. You find yourself in the courtyard of a middle-class home drawn by laughter and a swirling plume of sweet smoke. It's a gathering, a modest party, where family and friends share dates' nuts, and you suspect slightly exaggerated stories of past romantic triumphs. A woman in her 20s is showing off a new jar of perfumed oil, the stopper shaped like a tiny falcon. She lets everyone try a drop on their wrist, and the debate begins. Too strong, not enough sandalwood. Do you smell onions? You sneak a dab yourself and decide it's pleasant, if slightly reminiscent, of an overenthusiastic incense burner at a wedding. Tonight's hosts are proud of their oils and ointments displayed on shelves gifted between friends, swapped like baseball cards at festivals. You notice a boy eyeing the jars, clearly plotting to borrow one for his next riverside stroll. Beside him, an older woman grins and nudges. Don't use too much unless you want to attract every cat in Memphis. She has a point. Ancient love potions were famous not just for their allure, but for their unintended side effects. Historians still debate whether the legendary crocodile dung sunscreen was more of a beauty trick or an elaborate way to keep suitors at a distance. You wander through the gathering sampling honey cakes dusted with cinnamon and savoring a cup of barley beer so mild it could almost be called romantic. Across the courtyard, you spot a group huddled around a brazier, warming tiny cakes and arguing about the best way to prepare kaifi, an incense blend so precious it was reserved for temple rituals and on special nights for making someone's heart skip a beat. Fun fact, kaifi contained over a dozen ingredients, including raisins, wine myrrh, and yes, sometimes dried petals from those infamous blue lotus flowers, a recipe for love or for a headache. Historians still argue about that too. You follow the scent trail out the door and down a quieter lane where the local healer is just locking up for the night. Her shelves are lined with dried herbs and mysterious bundles wrapped in linen. She's famous for her love amulets, little bundles tied with colored thread meant to be tucked under pillows or hidden in clothing, guaranteed to make your heart's desire notice you or at least dream about you, she promises. She winks, but there's a knowing look in her eyes as if she's seen enough of human nature to know what actually works. Down by the riverside, an older couple sits together, legs dangling off a low wall, hands entwined. They share a flask of scented wine spiced with cinnamon and a drop of lotus extract. Drink this, and you'll dream sweet dreams, the husband says, squeezing his wife's fingers. The wife smiles, rolling her eyes, but she drinks anyway. You catch their laughter, soft, warm, familiar. In ancient Egypt, love was less about wild passion and more about small, consistent gestures, a cup of wine, a pressed flower, a night under the stars. The potions and perfumes were just the icing on the honey cake. You pause near a temple wall, half hidden by climbing vines, and overhear two priests debating the merits of a particularly potent incense. The goddess Hathor prefers frankincense, one insists. No, my friend, she wants blue lotus always. They sniff their own wrists, trying to settle the matter. Historians still debate whether the gods actually had favorite scents, or if priests just like to show off their personal collections. Nearby, a group of musicians prepares for an evening performance. They sprinkle themselves with rosewater, passing around a battered jar with the air of soldiers preparing for battle. Smell good play well, and maybe someone will notice you. The harpist jokes, running her fingers through her hair. You watch as they adjust their clothes, fuss over their oils, and tease each other about who is most likely to receive an admirer's garland tonight. As the music begins, you spot a young man, let's call him Paquette, off to the side, clutching a small bottle wrapped in linen. He's rehearsing his introduction planning to present the bottle as a gift to his secret crush. He nearly drops it twice, muttering to himself, "Don't spill it, don't spill it." You root for him. The stakes of ancient love sometimes seem as fragile as a glass vial in sweaty hands. Fun tidbit, Egyptian courtship wasn't all flowers and fragrances. Garlic, believe it or not, played a role too. Some couples exchanged garlic bulbs as tokens of affection, possibly as symbols of health and prosperity, or maybe just to test the limits of romance. Historians still argue whether the garlic thing ever actually worked, you think, or if it was just an elaborate prank passed down for centuries. Later, you wander past the stalls of perfumers packing up for the night. The ground is sticky with spilled oil and scattered petals, and the air buzzes with the last arguments of customers haggling over price. You catch the eye of a young woman who tucks a sprig of mint behind your ear with a grin. "For sweet words," she says. You blush. Yes, you can still blush after all this time, and promise yourself to try it at the next party. Returning to your mat, as the night deepens, you notice your skin is slick with a medley of scents. Lotus jasmine, a little frankincense, maybe a touch of garlic. Your senses are full, your mind foggy in the best way, and you wonder if thousands of years from now, someone will stand by another river in another city and laugh about the lengths people went to smell good for love. You lie down, the breeze cool and laced with perfume, and drift toward sleep. Somewhere a cat yowls, perhaps disturbed by too much myrrh or not enough fish. The night, spiced and fragrant, wraps you up, carrying you toward dreams where love is always just a drop of oil, a sweet word, and a little bit of luck away. You wake to a breeze that smells faintly of river mud and yesterday's perfume, with the dawn just starting to stain the world pink gold through palm fronds. Somewhere nearby, a bird whistles as if to say, "Time to get up and be awkward again." You groan softly, but love and ancient history waits for no one, least of all for sleepy travelers trying to press the snooze button on a world before alarm clocks. Today, the music of romance drifts through the city, strummed, hummed, and sometimes warbled off-key. You make your way toward the edge of a bustling courtyard, ears attuned to the song of life. This morning, the city is alive with the calls of hawkers selling fruit bakers pulling flatbreads from clay ovens, and the sharp, rhythmic patter of a scribe reciting poetry in the shade. Egyptians cherished words so much so that the line between love poem and desperate text message was pretty much non-existent, just with more references to papyrus and the Nile's tides. The first thing you hear as you wander into the square is the plucked string of a harp. It's not the refined royal instrument you might imagine, but a scuffed, cheerful thing propped on a young musician's knee. He grins sheepishly at a group of girls clustered nearby, his song both earnest and endearingly off-tempo. "My heart is a swallow," he sings, chasing the sweetness of your eyes. The girls giggle behind their hands, one of them possibly swooning, the rest definitely plotting to tease him about it later. You slide closer, drawn by the familiar scene, a scribe hunched over a table, laboriously copying lines of poetry onto a fresh sheet of papyrus. His brow furrows in concentration, tongue poking out in universal don't mess up now fashion. You recognize him, Nebbit, the same scribe who tried, and mostly failed, at love letter fame just days ago. He's clearly trying again, proof that persistence was as much a thing in ancient Egypt as it is now. A crowd gathers curious to see the scribe at work. It's not just the words that matter, but the act of writing each stroke, a tiny spell meant to turn hearts and spark daydreams. In a world where most people can't read, poets are as much magicians as artists. Nebbit's fingers fly, and his friend reads over his shoulder. "Her laughter is the honey in my beer." There's a pause, then a smirk. "Too much?" Nebbit asks. "Maybe just enough," his friend replies, and you can't help but grin. Historians still argue whether this sappy approach ever worked, or if it was just the ancient world's version of sending too many heart emojis. You wander through the crowd, listening to the sounds of the street. A woman recites a poem to a bored-looking donkey. Her audience may be indifferent, but her delivery is heartfelt. "I sing of your eyes as deep as the river, as bright as the morning's first light." The donkey's tail flicks unimpressed. Even animals, it seems, have high standards for romantic verse. Around the corner, you find a group of girls braiding each other's hair and sharing gossip about the latest love songs performed at the market. "Did you hear the one about the fisherman who serenaded his wife from a boat?" one girl whispers. "He sang until he fell in, and she had to rescue him." The others dissolve into laughter, one wiping tears from her eyes. You get the sense that embarrassing serenades are an eternal rite of passage, as old as the Nile itself. Not all poetry is public performance, though. In a quiet alcove, a boy sits with his knees drawn up, penning a note on a scrap of pottery. He glances nervously at the doorway, then scribbles faster, his cheeks red. You catch the words, "If you smile at me tomorrow, I will be braver than a lion." He folds the ostrakhan, carefully tucking it into the folds of his tunic, as if holding on to hope itself. Further along in the shaded garden of a wealthy merchant, a group of young nobles takes turns reciting verses they've composed. The stakes are high, a crown of lotus flowers for the best poet, and more importantly, the chance to impress the daughter of their host. The performances range from shockingly earnest to hilariously bad. One boy, voice cracking, declares, "Your hair is like the papyrus fields at dawn, long tangled and probably hiding frogs." Laughter erupts. His poem wins the crown for boldness, if not for style. Music floats through the air. The harpist from the market has wandered here, now joined by a flutist and a singer. Together, they weave an impromptu serenade for the gathered crowd. Her heart is a door open to the sun, closed to all but one. The singer winks at his partner, and you sense there's a joke between them, maybe about the door actually being stuck, or the sun being too hot for comfort. Love songs in Egypt weren't always serious. They were often playful, sometimes self-deprecating, and full of everyday details. A mainstream historical fact for you. Many love poems from ancient Egypt survive on scraps of papyrus and pottery, especially from the New Kingdom period. These verses offer an incredible window into the hearts and hopes of ordinary people, full of longing wit and a surprising amount of sarcasm. I will go and swim to the place where she is. One famous line goes for "the water is like wine when I see her." You wonder how many actual swimmers found themselves in trouble with the river gods or just with very unimpressed crocodiles. Scribal competitions were a real thing too. Young poets would sometimes duel in rhyme, with the winner receiving tokens of affection from the crowd. Flowers, ribbons, sometimes just applause. Historians still argue whether the best poets won the hearts of their listeners or if it was all just an excuse to skip chores for the day. It's comforting to know that even the ancients enjoyed a bit of friendly competition when it came to wooing their crushes. On the fringe of the festivities, you spot a group of older women rolling their eyes. In our day, one says men brought bread, not poems. Another retorts, that's because their poems were even worse. There's laughter and good-natured teasing, the kind that only comes from having seen enough love stories to know that most end in laundry, not legend. Late in the afternoon, as shadows grow long, a young couple finds a quiet corner. The boy shyly hands the girl a folded note, a sappy song written just for her. She reads it aloud, blushing, and then bursts out laughing. "You rhymed lotus with Botus," she teases, but she keeps the note, tucking it into her sash. Sometimes it's not about the quality of the poetry, but the courage it takes to offer your heart at all. You walk home as the sun dips toward the horizon, the city's walls echoing with snatches of song and laughter. Everywhere you look, people are composing, reciting, and occasionally butchering the art of romance. A rooster crows hopelessly off-beat, and someone from a rooftop yells, "Save it for sunrise, Romeo." You stifle a giggle, content to be a spectator in this endless talent show of love and lyrics. At the edge of the city, a final burst of music greets you. The scribe's apprentice, Nebet, has worked up the courage for one last performance. He stands in the center of a small crowd, harp in hand, voice quivering but determined. My love is the shade on the river's bank, cool and gentle in the noon heat. There are cheers, some jeers, and one heartfelt sigh from Mary, the noble girl. You wonder if this time, maybe he'll get his answer. You settle in for the night, your head full of sappy songs, bad rhymes, and the knowledge that romance in Egypt was as much about daring to speak as it was about saying the right words. Poetry, music, and the endless hope of a yes, all woven together in the sleepy warmth of the Nile. You rise to the muffled thump of drums and the faint echo of a reed flute, the air already thick with the mysteries of dusk. Tonight, Memphis is a city of shadows and secrets, perfect for sneaky meetings and temple rendezvous. As you stretch and slip on your sandals still dusted with last night's misadventures, you realize love here isn't just about public declarations or riverside serenades. Sometimes it's about subtle glances in moonlit halls, the rustle of linen robes in torchlit passageways, and the very real challenge of dodging priests' nosy relatives, and of course sacred cats who are convinced they own every square inch of the place. You find yourself outside one of the city's grand temples, its columns towering into the sky, painted in colors so vivid they seem to glow even at twilight. Flickering torches cast pools of golden light onto polished stone, illuminating intricate carvings of gods, pharaohs, and if you look closely, more than a few scenes of tender hand-holding and suspiciously private offerings. You chuckle, remembering that romance is apparently as eternal as Ra's journey across the heavens. The temple is bustling. Priests shuffle past in spotless linen, their heads shaved smooth, carrying incense and sacred scrolls. But beneath this orderly exterior, you sense another world, one of whispered rendezvous, secret hand signals, and surreptitious notes tucked behind statues of Hathor, goddess of love music, and parties that run just a little too late. You sidle into the shadows, hugging the cool stone and eavesdrop on the low murmur of voices echoing in the hypostyle hall. A couple stands in a shadowed alcove, barely more than silhouettes. He slips her a papyrus scroll, and she tucks it quickly into her sash before a passing priest can spot them. "Meet me by the sacred lake at midnight," you hear him whisper. The girl nods, lips barely moving, and vanishes into the shifting half-light. The risks are real, temple rules are strict, and a misstep might earn you more than just a scolding. There's always the threat of a few days sweeping floors, or even worse, cleaning the cat enclosures. Historians still argue whether the high priest really installed those temple cats just to keep an eye on everyone's love life. You sneak further into the temple's depths, marveling at the artful way lovers communicate without words. A dropped necklace, a carefully arranged basket of figs, a pattern traced in spilled sand. These are the secret languages of affection. The tension is palpable. Every sideways glance could be loaded with meaning. Every brush of fingers a risk worth taking. The world is smaller here, every sense sharper, every heartbeat louder. In the sanctuary, a group of acolytes is preparing offerings for Hathor. They arrange flowers, pour sweet wine, and light cones of incense that send fragrant plumes spiraling into the night air. The goddess smiles down from her shrine, her stone face gentle and knowing. You sense she's seen more secret rendezvous than she'll ever admit. One priestess, barely older than you, hums a love song under her breath as she works. He waits for me by the river, where the reeds are thick and the moon is thin, she murmurs. You wonder who she's singing for and whether her beloved will be brave enough to show up on time. Outside the temple gardens are a labyrinth of tall papyrus, blooming lilies, and secret passageways. Couples slip into the greenery, their laughter muffled by the lush leaves. A pair of friends stand guard near a statue of Thoth, exchanging conspiratorial nods and pretending to discuss philosophy. One of them drops a line from a recent debate. Historians still argue whether Thoth invented love letters or just tolerated them. A quirky fact for you, temple complexes in Egypt weren't just places for worship. They often hosted massive festivals, feasts, and even matchmaking events. During the Feast of Opet, or festivals for Hathor, crowds flocked to the temple grounds hoping for blessings, good fortune, and occasionally a chance to sneak away with someone special. The feasts could get wild enough that even the sternest priest might accidentally look the other way for an hour or two. Tonight, you're swept along in a festival of your own. Musicians wander through the gardens, filling the night with music drums, thumping flutes, singing sistrums, rattling out joyful rhythms. Couples dance in the dappled light, their shadows spinning and merging on the flagstones. You watch as two girls share a laugh, one tugging the other into a slow, playful waltz. Not everyone is here to fall in love. Some just want a friend, a song, or a night free from chores. On the far side of the temple, you spot a group of young men daring each other to leave notes on the altar of Hathor. The bravest scribbles, "I hope she notices me," and lays it at the goddess's feet. The others clap him on the back, then run away giggling before any priest catches on. You can't help but grin. Some traditions, it seems, are simply universal. But not all meetings go as planned. You pass a young couple in mid-argument, trying to keep their voices low enough not to attract attention. "You said you'd meet me by the sacred pool," she hisses. "You know how many pools this temple has," he retorts. A temple cat slinks by tail, held high as if judging their navigational skills. You stifle a laugh. Even the best laid plans can unravel when there are this many hiding places and that many feline distractions. A little later, you overhear a group of priests debating the finer points of divine matchmaking. One insists that the gods choose every couple. Another counters. Or maybe people are just stubborn and refuse to take a hint. They swap stories of disastrous matches and surprise successes. Historians still argue whether the gods intervened or just enjoyed the spectacle, the eldest says, wagging a finger. As the night deepens, the temple empties out except for a few daring souls making one last sweep for lost notes, forgotten garlands, or the chance to catch someone lingering by a statue hoping for a midnight conversation. You find yourself pausing at the sacred lake water, reflecting a sky full of stars. You spot the girl from earlier, her papyrus scroll in hand, waiting in the reeds. Moments later, her admirer joins her, breathless and grinning. They talk quietly, hands barely touching, and you let the scene wash over you, the hope, the risk, the ancient thrill of a secret meeting under the goddess's watchful gaze. You tiptoe away, careful not to disturb them or the three cats now tangled together on a warm stone nearby. As you wander home beneath a ceiling of stars, you carry with you the secret languages, sly signals, and endless possibilities of temple dates and sneaky meetings. The Nile glimmers beyond the city walls, and somewhere someone slips a flower into their sleeve, planning their own late-night adventure. Love, after all, is never just public spectacle. Sometimes it's the silent promise of a whispered word, a stolen moment, or the quiet joy of knowing that somewhere in the shadows, someone is waiting just for you. You wake to the earthy scent of wet grass and the far-off squawk of an ibis, the dawn stretching pink across the fields outside Memphis. If you thought love only flourished in palaces and beside golden columns, think again. This morning, you're headed to where romance is even muddier and more unpredictable. The bustling fields crowded by hard-working farmers and their daily symphony of grumbling donkeys, bristling papyrus, and the faint but ever-present whiff of onions. The day is just beginning. You join a line of workers trudging down narrow dikes between flooded plots, their feet caked with Nile silt arms full of papyrus reeds. Here, the flirting is less poetry, more playful banter. Someone tosses you a bundle of reeds shouting, "Catch!" or you'll have to share your lunch. You catch it barely and laugh suddenly, part of a world where affection is measured in small acts of teamwork and mock insults rather than grand gestures. You notice, too, the little things, a girl tucking a flower behind her ear, a boy splashing his friend by accident, the way hands linger together just a moment longer than needed while loading baskets. Egypt's fields, you soon discover, are where love stories are written in mud and sweat, not gold ink. As the sun rises, you're put to work, gathering papyrus stems, stripping away their skins to reveal the soft, pale heart within. Beside you, a young woman, call her Tia, matches your pace, grinning every time you look her way. "Don't let the overseer catch you slacking," she teases, "unless you're trying to win his heart too." You're pretty sure she's joking, but just in case you work a little faster. You join the workers at a rustic festival, an impromptu celebration marking the end of a good harvest. There's music, laughter, and the unmistakable scent of roasted onions and garlic, two crops as vital to the Egyptian diet as bread and beer, and apparently to their courtship rituals. It turns out that bringing someone a perfectly round onion is almost as good as a bouquet of flowers, if they're the right sort of person. Nothing says, "I care," like a gift. You can also eat Tia jokes, handing you a bulb the size of your fist. Fun fact, onions weren't just food. They were symbols of eternity, their endless layers representing everlasting love. Some couples even exchanged onions as wedding tokens, tucking them beneath their pillows, or more practically, into their cooking pots. Historians still argue whether this tradition began as heartfelt symbolism or just a way to sneak snacks into bed without getting caught. During the festival, you take part in a tug-of-war, teams divided by village, each side egged on by their loudest aunties. The losing team owes the winners a basket of figs, and the playful bickering soon turns into a competition for who can tell the most embarrassing love story. Tia shares a tale of a boy who tried to impress her by balancing 3 clay jars on his head. It didn't end well for the jars. You counter with a story about mistaking a frog for a date snack, drawing groans and giggles in equal measure. Out in the fields, a group of older farmers sits beneath a palm sharing beer from a clay jug. Their laughter rings out as they swap memories of youthful escapades, a stolen kiss behind the grain, shed a moonlit dance after the harvest, the time someone tried to write a love poem in hieroglyphs and accidentally insulted a neighbor's goat. Romance is hard work, one sighs wiping sweat from his brow. But at least it's never boring. You nod because from what you've seen, love here is as much about resilience as it is about roses. At midday, the workers gather for a meal, bread and cheese unwrapped on a reed mat, figs passed from hand to hand. Tia sits beside you, and when she laughs, it's bright and genuine, not rehearsed for effect. Some people think romance is all about palaces and perfumes, she says, but I'd rather have someone to share my shade tree. You agree there's a certain honesty in the way life and love intermingle here, tangled up with chores and the occasional bee sting. A quirky tidbit. Farmers believed that singing while you work could make crops grow faster, and if you sang to a certain someone, it was supposed to make them like you more. The songs aren't always romantic. Sometimes they're about the weather, or the price of onions, or how the neighbor's cow wandered off again. But every now and then, you catch a line meant for someone special, and it feels like a secret folded into the day's work. Later, a group of girls weaves garlands from papyrus flowers, handing them out to the boys with strict instructions. Wear it, or you'll be unlucky in love all year. The boys grumble, but you notice them fixing the flowers behind their ears anyway. Tia gives you a garland, and when you ask what happens if you lose it, she just grins. Then you have to come back and get another. Not a bad excuse for a second meeting. As the afternoon heat intensifies, a sudden shout rings out someone has brought a barrel of fresh beer, and the festival crowd surges forward. You're pulled into a circle, handed a cup, and urged to make a toast. Not knowing what to say, you blurt out, "May your fields be green, your onions sweet," and your love story's only slightly embarrassing. Laughter erupts, and Tia raises her cup to yours. As the sun dips lower, you help tidy up, carrying baskets of leftover food and gathering stray reeds. You and Tia linger at the edge of the fields, her fingers brushing yours as you work. The sky blazes orange, the day's labor fading into a gentle quiet. In the hush, Tia confides, "It's not always easy loving someone out here, but when the fields are empty and the sun goes down, it's nice to have a hand to hold." You squeeze her hand just once, just enough. As you walk back toward the village, Tia gives you a final gift, a single perfect onion. You laugh, promising to treasure it forever, or at least until dinner. The two of you part ways, feet muddy, but hearts light, each step softened by the memory of small kindnesses and quiet moments shared. By the time you reach your mat, you're tired in the best way. The world outside the palaces is rougher, louder, but somehow more real. You fall asleep with the onion under your pillow, just to see if it works a garland of papyrus flowers beside you, and the faint hope that tomorrow will bring more chances to stumble through the muddy, marvelous fields of Egyptian romance. You wake to the smell of baking bread, a rooster's ill-timed crow, and the kind of morning energy that only comes when a wedding is brewing. You roll over, squint into the sunlight, and realize the entire village is in a state of happy chaos. Neighbors bustling about children chasing each other with wild glee, and vendors already arguing about whose beer is freshest. Today, you're about to witness one of ancient Egypt's most beloved spectacles, marriage negotiations, where love, logic, and livestock come together in a parade of tradition, expectation, and, yes, occasionally, very questionable cake. You shuffle out to the main street, sandals kicking up dust, and almost trip over a parade of cows adorned with colorful garlands, bells clinking merrily. You step aside, careful not to spook the animals, because in Egypt, cattle aren't just for milk or meat. They're the backbone of wedding bargaining. The bride's family glances you up and down, sizing you up as you pass. A mother leans in, whispering, "He looks like he could negotiate a good dowry." You wink. She snorts, amused. A cluster of elders convenes under a shady sycamore, papyrus contracts unrolled and ready. There's a solemnity here, but also a sense of playful brinkmanship. The groom's uncle launches into an epic list of his nephew's virtues: strong arms, kind heart, excellent teeth, only occasionally late for work in the fields. The bride's aunt counters with tales of the girl's beauty skill at weaving, and most importantly, her legendary recipe for onion stew. You try not to laugh, but it's clear everyone is enjoying the back and forth as much as the deal itself. Marriage in Egypt is a public affair. Everyone's involved, relatives, neighbors, even the village cat currently sprawled on a basket of dates, eyeing the proceedings with bored suspicion. Children run between the adults fetching water and occasionally eavesdropping for juicy details to trade later. A scribe hunched over a low table copies the terms in neat script, pausing now and then to make sure both families agree on the number of cows' jars of beer and bolts of linen changing hands. Historians still argue whether these contracts were more romantic or just the world's earliest prenups. The dowry negotiations reach a crescendo. 3 cows, 2 goats, 10 jugs of beer, and a basket of figs, shouts the groom's uncle. The bride's aunt shakes her head. She's worth at least 4 cows. Look at her embroidery. You suspect a few of the cows are already promised to next week's wedding, but nobody seems to mind. After all, the point isn't really the livestock. It's the laughter, the stories, the ritual of coming together as families. The scribe finally signs off, and the crowd erupts into cheers. You follow the procession as it winds through the village, headed toward the groom's house, a modest mud brick home swept clean for the occasion, with garlands strung across the doorway. Friends and neighbors have gathered to watch the newlyweds enter, showering them with petals, dates, and the occasional onion for good luck, and you suspect to keep things interesting in the kitchen. Inside, the couple's hands are bound together with a strip of linen, a symbolic gesture of unity. There's a blessing from the local priest, a short speech from a wise grandmother, and then finally cake, or to be more precise, honey-sweetened bread, shaped into elaborate designs, spirals, braids, and even tiny animals. You try a bite and almost crack a tooth. It's delicious, but dense enough to survive a trip down the Nile and back. Fun fact: some researchers believe Egyptians invented the world's oldest wedding cake this way, mixing honey dates and nuts into festive loaves. Historians still argue whether these cakes were meant to be eaten or just admired, since leftovers have turned up in tombs perfectly preserved and apparently still inedible. The party spills outside, music swelling as drummers and flutists strike up a tune. The newlyweds join the first dance, surrounded by a swirling circle of family and friends. Kids chase each other underfoot, bridesmaids giggle, and the air fills with the scent of flowers and spiced wine. You spot the scribe from earlier raising a cup to his own secret crush, and you realize romance is in the air, sometimes subtle, sometimes as obvious as a cow parade. A few elders share advice with the young couple. Never go to bed angry, one says, or at least never go to bed without hiding the onions first. Another suggests a good marriage is like a strong basket. You need every reed to work together, or you'll lose your figs. There's laughter and a little teasing, but underneath it all, a sense of community, everyone rooting for the couple's happiness. You find yourself at the table of wedding gifts, marveling at the variety pottery amulets, bundles of linen, and of course, jars of oil and perfume. For sweet dreams, says a neighbor handing the bride a sprig of lotus. For healthy children, another wishes presenting a basket of garlic bulbs. You wonder if all these tokens will fit in the new household, or if most will quietly disappear by morning. As night falls, torches are lit, casting a golden glow over the courtyard. The feast continues, platters of roast duck, baskets of fruit, and more honey cakes than anyone can possibly finish. Guests take turns sharing stories how the couple met, how they almost missed their first meeting, how a goat once disrupted a proposal by eating the scribe's best contract. The laughter is loud and contagious. Later, you catch a quieter moment, the bride and groom sitting side by side, shoes off, feet, dusty fingers entwined. They share a piece of cake, stealing glances at each other as if the world has narrowed to just them. You think for a moment that maybe the best part of any wedding is the calm after the crowd, when love looks less like a contract and more like a promise made in whispers. You head home under the soft glow of lanterns, your mind spinning with images, cows decked in flowers, dense honey cakes, friends dancing beneath the stars. Weddings here are loud, joyful, and sometimes absurd, but always anchored in the belief that love, like bread, rises best when it's shared. You tuck yourself into bed, fingers sticky with honey, a smile on your face. Somewhere another wedding is being planned, another set of cows are getting nervous, and the ancient cycle of love, bargaining, and questionable baked goods goes on. You wake to a gentle chorus of chickens and the distant clang of a water jug against stone-clear signals that married life in ancient Egypt is anything but a peaceful retreat. Instead, it's a busy, slightly chaotic, and deeply communal affair full of familiar voices and unexpected joys. The festivities from last night's wedding linger in your muscles. You stretch, yawn, and remember that the ancient Egyptian version of happily ever after is just as quirky and occasionally messy as any modern love story. The sun peeks through your reed shutters, spotlighting dust motes and the slightly crooked welcome home garland made of dried lotus petals, already a little wilted. You roll out of bed toes, hitting cool earth, and shuffle into the main room of your new mud brick house. It's small but bright, with painted pottery on the shelves, a low table for meals, and 2 sturdy stools you suspect will host more family meetings than romantic dinners. A cat is already sprawled in the prime spot of sunlight, purring with the smugness of a household deity. Outside, the courtyard is alive with activity. Your new spouse, let's say it's Tia, your partner from the festival fields, waves you over to help draw water from the well. Her hair is mussed, her hands already dusted with flour. If we don't get the water now, your mother will be here in a heartbeat with complaints about dry bread. She jokes, and you laugh, grateful for this easy rhythm of togetherness. Here, romance often reveals itself not in grand declarations, but in the quiet teamwork of daily life, kneading dough, patching leaks, coaxing the stubborn goat back inside before the neighbor's rooster picks another fight. A mainstream historical fact for your sleepy brain: most Egyptian couples lived with or near extended family, and in-laws could be enthusiastic about giving advice. It wasn't uncommon for a newlywed to discover that the guest room was, in fact, just for the groom's mother and the spare blanket reserved for a cousin who just needed a place for a few days. You share meals, chores, and inevitably more than a few opinions about how things used to be done. You're swept up in a flurry of chores, learning the patterns of your new life. Together, you and Tia bake flatbread in a clay oven, grind spices for stew, and chase chickens away from the clean laundry. There's teasing. You call that folding occasional mock arguments about the best way to keep sand out of the kitchen and a genuine sense of partnership. At the heart of it all, the gentle, everyday affection that only grows with each shared challenge, like the time you both tried to fix the leaky roof with palm leaves and accidentally invited a family of frogs to move in. Don't worry, they only stayed for a week. Mostly. You're invited to dinner by Tia's parents, who live just across the lane. The meal is hearty beans, stewed greens, and bread dipped in oil. Conversation flows between bites, stories of the old days, reminders not to forget the offering at the temple tomorrow, subtle hints about grandchildren, no pressure of course, but your cousin already has 3. You learn that family is the true foundation of every marriage here, and alone time is a luxury only enjoyed during the rare blissful nap. The home itself is full of small quirks. The walls are painted with faded patterns, geese lotus blooms, a family tree sprawling above the doorway. You hang new amulets near the entrance for luck one to ward off jealousy, another to invite prosperity, and a tiny clay cow, a wedding gift meant to ensure the next year's cattle are as fat as the dowry cows were festive. You glance at the ancient plumbing, a short, slightly slanted clay pipe leading to a communal well. Historians still argue whether Egyptians were brilliant engineers or simply very optimistic about gravity. Evenings are your favorite. The day's heat fades. Neighbors gather in the courtyard with lanterns and stories, and Tia sits beside you, leaning her head on your shoulder. Sometimes you help mend fishing nets or weave baskets. Other nights, you all play Senet, letting the cat supervise or sabotage the game pieces. Laughter rolls through the night air, and every so often a neighbor drops by with a gift fresh dates a new batch of beer or a basket of onions. You never know whether it's an expression of affection, friendship, or just a sly way to offload extra produce. A quirky tidbit: married couples sometimes exchanged miniature figurines called ushabti to symbolize shared chores or future hopes. You find one tucked beneath your pillow, a tiny clay figure holding a basket of bread. Tia grins, explaining, "If I get tired of baking, maybe he'll do it for us." Historians still debate whether these little helpers brought good luck or just more dust to sweep. One night, as a storm rolls in and rain patters on the roof, you share a quiet moment with Tia. The lights are dim, the house is warm, and the air smells of cinnamon and wet earth. "I'm glad we chose each other," she says softly, "even if it means sharing a house with your mother, 3 frogs, and half the neighborhood." You squeeze her hand heart full, realizing that happiness here is built not on perfection, but on patience, laughter, and the willingness to tackle life's surprises together. You settle into the gentle, persistent rhythm of married life chores, family meals, borrowed tools, borrowed time. It's never quite as peaceful as the love poems promised, but it's more real, more grounded, and in its way, more romantic. You fall asleep to the sound of Tia's breathing and the Nile flowing quietly in the distance, dreaming of tomorrow's sunrise and the promise of another day together. You're jolted awake by the sound of something ajar, a papyrus scroll clattering to the floor, quickly followed by a hushed, frantic shh from the shadows beyond your reed curtain. Instinct says ignore it, but curiosity and the promise of drama wins out, and you peek into the courtyard just in time to witness ancient Egypt's most entertaining pastime, the forbidden romance. Across the alley, beneath a canopy of grapevines, two young lovers are exchanging furtive glances while pretending to examine a broken water jug. Their friends hover nearby, looking both thrilled and terrified at being accomplices. One keeps watch at the corner, nervously scanning the street for parents, priests, or worst of all, nosy neighbors with too much time on their hands and an endless appetite for gossip. You recognize the look on their faces. This isn't just a crush. It's a high-stakes operation with a side of stage fright. You creep closer, ducking behind a pile of sun-bleached laundry. In this city, secret meetings are an art form, a coded knock, a chalk mark on a door, a handful of blue lotus petals scattered on a windowsill. Lovers communicate through tiny gestures, a fold in a headscarf, a ribbon tied in a particular way, a message scratched into the dust outside a doorway. The language of love, it seems, is equal parts creativity and risk management. One of the boys slips a scrap of papyrus to his beloved written in careful hieroglyphics. She reads it blushing and tucks it into her sash. The message is simple, but risky. Meet me by the old sycamore at dusk. The sycamore, as every local knows, is the village's favorite rendezvous spot, so popular, in fact, that you suspect half the town's love affairs start and end in its shade. You grin, thinking about all the anxious footsteps and nervous laughter that Tree has witnessed over the years. A quirky fact for your sleep-deprived mind. Ancient Egyptians used secret codes in their love notes, writing certain hieroglyphs backward or including puns, so only the intended could decode the real meaning. Some messages were even hidden inside jewelry or woven into the designs of linen headbands. Historians still argue whether these secret codes fooled suspicious parents or simply amused the local cats, who, let's be honest, were probably in on every scheme anyway. The tension rises when a neighbor arms full of bread suddenly appears. Instantly, the young group scatters, one boy dropping his papyrus in the rush. You dart over to retrieve it, curiosity piqued, but all you find is a carefully drawn heart, a tiny image of a fish, the ancient Egyptian emoji for catch me if you can, and a cheeky doodle of a cat with wide, knowing eyes. You slip it back into the shadows, unwilling to be the cause of heartbreak, or worse, another round of family drama. Not all forbidden romances are young or fleeting. Later that day, you stumble across a pair of elders, gray-haired, wrinkled, but eyes bright as ever, sitting together on a low stone wall, hands intertwined. Their families, you gather from whispered snippets, once disapproved of their love. Decades later, they're still together, proof that the heart doesn't always listen to reasoned social status or wedding contracts. She was promised to a baker, the old man says, squeezing her hand. But I had better stories. She laughs, the kind of laugh that says the world's best plans are no match for a stubborn heart. Back near the river, you spot a different kind of secret one woven not in notes, but in deeds. A woman leaves a garland of lilies at the door of a fisherman's hut, her eyes darting around to see if anyone notices. The gesture is simple, yet powerful. It's a message only two people will understand. A private, I'm thinking of you in a world where privacy is a luxury. At the evening market, you overhear a group of young men debating the risks of their latest escapades. If her father catches us, we're doomed, one whispers. He's got arms like a hippo and a temper to match. His friend shrugs. Then be faster, or sneakier, or learn to swim. They all laugh, but the edge of nervous excitement is unmistakable. These secret courtships require cleverness, patience, and a willingness to endure the occasional public scolding or accidental tumble into the canal. Back in your own courtyard, a neighbor confides in you over a mug of cool barley beer. He admits to carving messages into the beams of his family's granary, secret confessions, initials entwined in loops and whorls that only his beloved knows to look for. Historians still argue whether the pharaoh's spies really searched for love notes in the temples. He chuckles, but my mother definitely found mine in the cellar. The most daring couples invent elaborate systems, a flick of the wrist to signal a safe meeting, a dropped bead to warn of nearby danger, a snippet of song hummed in passing to communicate longing. You start to realize that love, when it's not officially sanctioned, is a game of invention and improvisation, a daily challenge to outwit parents, priests, and fate itself. The night falls, and you wander through quiet streets, watching as secret meetings play out in moonlit gardens and behind closed doors. The The forbidden lovers you've encountered slip through your memory. The girl who wore lotus petals to send a message. The boy who painted a fish on his sleeve. The old couple whose laughter outlasted a lifetime of obstacles. You wonder how many stories went untold, how many love letters dissolved in the rain, how many secret codes are still hidden in the cracks of Memphis's ancient walls. At last, you settle onto your mat mind spinning with all the clever signals and hidden promises of the day. Outside, a cat yowls a sentinel to lovers everywhere, and the city quiets, each shadow holding a secret, each breeze carrying the whisper of another forbidden romance. You drift toward sleep. One question lingering: were the secret meetings worth the risk? The codes, the suspense. If the laughter and sighs you've witnessed are any clue, the answer as always is a resounding, mischievous yes. You wake to the golden hush of a new day, and this time there's a subtle electricity in the air, a certain grandeur that seeps through the city's stone and mud brick. You stretch and realize you're not the only one feeling it. Neighbors bustle past with extra purpose. The priests at the temple carry themselves a little straighter, and word is out that the royal barge will soon glide down the Nile. Today, you'll glimpse a world where love is writ large, every affair amplified by the power and politics of Egypt's ruling class. Pharaohs and queens, it seems, have romance problems of their own. You stake out a spot near the riverbank as the city gathers to watch the spectacle. The royal barge approaches sails, billowing crew in crisp white linen. At the bow stands Pharaoh. Let's say it's Ramses II, legendary for both his monuments and his habit of marrying more than once. At his side, Queen Nefertari, radiant in gold and turquoise, her smile as enigmatic as the Sphinx. You catch yourself staring, and so does everyone else. This, after all, is as close to a celebrity couple sighting as ancient Egypt gets. The crowd buzzes with gossip. He built her a temple, one woman marvels just to say, "I love you." Her friend scoffs. "My husband's idea of romance is letting me have the last date." You can't help but smile. Grand gestures may impress, but it's the everyday affection that really sticks. Still, it's hard not to be swept up by the spectacle servants scattering flower petals, musicians playing lyres, and banners snapping in the breeze. A mainstream historical fact, pharaohs often married for both love and politics. Ramses II's devotion to Nefertari is legendary. Her name carved in stone, her image immortalized at Abu Simbel. Public displays of affection weren't rare for Egypt's rulers. Temple statues and tombs all bear witness to their bonds. But historians still debate whether these marriages were true love matches or careful strategies to secure alliances and heirs. You linger as the royal couple disembarks. Nefertari greets the people with grace, her hand resting lightly in Ramses', a tiny gesture, yet it radiates power and tenderness. Behind them trail other wives, daughters, sons, all in dazzling attire. The city is abuzz. Who's in favor? Who's out of favor? Who got the shiniest amulet this month? Royal relationships, you realize, come with their own brand of high-stakes drama. In a shaded pavilion, you overhear a group of palace officials speculating about the latest gossip. Did you hear the princess was caught sneaking out to meet the young general? Historians still argue whether that general ever made it home again. Laughter ripples through the group. Rumors swirl faster than the Nile current affairs, alliances, broken engagements, and gifts so extravagant they could bankroll a small village for a year. You're swept up in the spectacle of royal romance, marveling at the opulence and pressure. Court poets compete to craft the most flattering verses. Musicians are summoned to serenade queens and consorts. You catch snatches of a love song dedicated to Nefertari. "My heart is yours, I have given it to you. Never will I let it be far from you." It's almost enough to make you swoon, almost because the flute player keeps missing a note and the crowd is trying not to giggle. A quirky tidbit, Queen Hatshepsut, one of the few female pharaohs, surrounded herself with trusted officials, some of whom may have been more than just colleagues. Her relationship with Senenmut, her chief architect, is the subject of endless speculation. Their graffiti appears together on temple walls, and historians still argue whether these marks were declarations of love or just ancient best friends forever doodles. As the day unfolds, the royal family hosts a festival in the palace gardens. Dancers whirl, the scent of roasted duck and lotus wine fills the air, and everywhere you look, couples slip away for private moments beneath the sycamores. Even the pharaoh isn't immune to a little romantic escapade he's spotted sneaking a date the fruit, not the person to Nefertari when he thinks no one's watching. Of course, everyone is. You mingle among the lesser nobles and servants, listening to whispered opinions. That amulet, it means she's still his favorite. Did you see how close he sat to the new queen? Historians still argue whether Queen Tai really wore sandals made of gold, or if that's just a poet's exaggeration. Every trinket, every glance is scrutinized and reinterpreted 100 times before sunset. As twilight falls, the royal couple retreats to their private chambers, but the city is still humming. You watch as palace guards escort a secret pair of lovers through a hidden gate. Another scandal in the making, another story for the ages. Maybe it'll end in heartbreak, maybe in legend. Either way, it's proof that romance, grand or secret, official or forbidden, is at the heart of every Egyptian tale. You wander home dazzled by the day's displays and quietly grateful that your own love life isn't immortalized in stone or dissected by every scribe with a sharp reed. But you also feel a little inspired. If pharaohs and queens could manage to steal a few sweet moments amid all the pageantry and politics, surely anyone can. You drift off, the distant music of the palace still echoing in your ears, imagining what it must have been like to love in a world where every gesture mattered, every secret was at risk, and every heart, even a royal one, could flutter just as nervously as yours. The sun climbs higher as you blink yourself awake, this time to the rattle of vendors setting up their stalls and the sing-song voices of neighbors calling out for fresh figs and barley bread. The festival fireworks of royal romance have faded, but you find yourself drawn to the quieter beauty of everyday love, the small, steady flame that glows between ordinary people in the ancient city, far from the gold and gossip of the palace. You stroll through the bustling bazaar where love lives in the chaos of the marketplace. You're jostled between a fruit seller's call's best pomegranates in Memphis and a weaver's display of bright linen shawls. The air is thick with the sense of garlic mint and sun-warmed dates. A boy, maybe 12, runs past you clutching a bouquet of wildflowers destined, you suspect, for a girl tending her family's melon stall. He slows, smooths his hair, and offers the flowers with an awkward smile. She laughs, takes them, and promptly pelts him with a fig. In Egypt, flirtation comes with snacks. At a pottery stand, you overhear a gentle argument between an older couple about which bowl is best for tonight's lentil stew. Get the bigger one, the wife insists. You always say you aren't hungry, then eat twice. The husband winks, then tries to haggle for a discount with the excuse that the bowl will hold the soup of my heart. The potter is unimpressed, but his wife, minding the next stall, claps her hands in delight. You old fox, after 30 years you still chase me with words. Everyone laughs, and you notice how affection here is as much about laughter as it is about longing. You spot Tia, the same Tia whose garland of papyrus flowers now decorates your doorway, haggling fiercely for a bundle of leeks. She glances over, grins, and tosses you a date. You're just in time to carry these, she says, dumping a basket into your arms. Side by side, you weave through the market together. There's an easy comfort in the way you walk, matching steps, sharing the weight, ducking to avoid a chicken with ideas of its own. Egypt's marketplaces are about more than commerce. They're meeting grounds, gossip hubs, and the perfect backdrop for hundreds of daily love stories. Here, romance blooms not through grand declarations, but in the practiced rituals of everyday life, a shared bite of fruit, an inside joke, a gentle nudge in a crowded alley. You see couples of all ages, young sweethearts whispering beneath awnings, parents chasing toddlers through baskets of garlic, old friends lingering over a cup of beer. Historians still argue whether the best love matches began at market or in the shade of the temple. You think smiling at the swirl of humanity. A mainstream historical fact: ancient Egyptian families often arranged marriages, but young people had ways to make their preferences known. Gifting food, sharing a secret smile at the well, even plotting market accidents were all strategies to catch someone's eye, or at least get first pick of the freshest figs. Marketplaces were also spaces where class boundaries could blur. A fisherman might flirt with a baker's daughter. A weaver might lock eyes with a carpenter's son. Love, in its stubborn way, didn't always check the guest list before showing up. You carry your basket back through winding alleys, dodging muddy puddles and loose chickens. Along the way, you pass open doorways where families gather for midday meals. You're invited in for bread and cheese by a neighbor with too much food and not enough company, a common theme here. Hospitality is part of courtship, too. Every meal shared is a chance to deepen connection, to turn strangers into friends, friends into something more. In the small sunlit courtyard of your own home, Tia lays out lunch bread leeks cheese olives. The breeze rustles the garland over the door. You sit together on the cool stone floor, dipping bread in oil, savoring the pause between the morning's rush and the afternoon's chores. Tia bumps your knee with hers. Don't let me forget your mother wants us to stop by later. You groan, but she just grins. She makes good beer admit it. She's right, and you both know it. A quirky tidbit: Egyptian families often kept pet monkeys or birds. In your neighbor's courtyard, a cheeky monkey swings from the laundry line, pausing to watch an elderly couple cuddle beneath a fig tree. The wife scolds the monkey, the husband slips her a sweet, and the monkey steals a sock romance, comedy, and chaos all tangled together. After lunch, you help with small chores, patching a crack in the wall, chasing the neighbor's goat again, and stringing onions from the rafters for good luck. Tia sweeps humming a love song under her breath. You remember the way music and poetry once filled the streets and realize the real music of Egyptian romance is right here: the scrape of the broom, the laughter in the courtyard, the gentle rhythm of life shared together. As dusk falls, you stroll with Tia to her parents' house for supper. The streets are alive with voices, old friends calling out children, playing neighbors, arguing about the best place to buy lentils. At dinner, the table is crowded, the food simple but plentiful, the jokes relentless. Your father-in-law offers up another story about the time he courted Tia's mother. He got lost, knocked over 3 market stalls, and had to barter his best sandals for forgiveness. The family laughs. Tia's mother rolls her eyes. He's still wearing My Patience Thin, and you realize love here is as much about survival as it is about sentiment. As night settles, you walk home together beneath a sky thick with stars. There's a quiet joy in knowing that everyday romance, the market trips, the shared chores, the laughter over leeks and bread, is just as powerful, just as lasting as any love story carved into the walls of a temple, maybe more so. You fall asleep with the faint sound of Tia's humming, the warmth of her hand in yours, and the deep contentment of knowing that the greatest romances are lived day after day in the small and peaceful courtyards of ordinary homes. You wake to a rare, uneasy silence, the sort that falls only after storms or just before a drama unfolds. The sun is barely up, yet the air feels charged, like even the pigeons are gossiping today. Something is different in Memphis. As you shuffle to the courtyard, you notice Tia stirring a pot a little quieter than usual, while a neighbor whispers urgently across the fence. There's a tension that's as old as love itself: heartache, miscommunication, and the epic messiness of ancient Egyptian breakups. It begins, as these things often do, with a triangle, 2 friends, and a new arrival at the barley mill. You see them all, nervy glances, enforced laughter, the sort of trio where one always walks a little ahead and another always trails behind. The city's grapevine is in overdrive. Did you hear Nebet was seen with that reed merchant from downriver? But what about Sabu? He gave her the best dates in the market. Historians still argue whether she liked the dates or just the drama. You pass the market, and it's unusually subdued. Even the fruit sellers are distracted, whispering about the latest spat. 2 girls stand apart from the crowd, eyes bright with tears and indignation, their friends hovering like anxious sparrows. One throws her hands in the air, declaring loudly, "Let him chase all the lotus blossoms he wants. I hope he trips over a goat." Ancient Egypt, where heartbreak comes with flair. You wander toward the docks, hoping for some peace, but instead find yourself in the middle of an argument. A young couple, faces flushed, stand toe-to-toe, voices low but intense. "You said you'd come to the festival with me. I was working late, my uncle's ox wandered off again." Excuses, always excuses. The debate continues, a mixture of real grievances and invented slights. Nearby, an older man shakes his head. Love is simple. People are complicated. You nod, thinking he's on to something. A mainstream historical fact: ancient Egyptians didn't see love as a guarantee of smooth sailing. Songs, stories, and letters from the era are full of longing, jealousy, even betrayal. Poets wrote of hearts torn in two, lovers lamented fickle fortune and divorce, while less common than today, was neither scandal nor tragedy, just another twist in the river's current. Couples could part ways and remarry, and legal documents from the period show clear, even generous terms for separation. Historians still argue whether these arrangements were liberating or simply a pragmatic approach to life's unpredictability. As the day unfolds, you see signs of mending too. Tia's cousin, heartbroken last week, has recruited friends to help her paint the courtyard. They splash the walls with bright, optimistic colors, blue, green, yellow, and fill the air with laughter. Better to change the walls than wait for the world to change him, someone jokes. A neighbor stops by with a basket of figs for new beginnings, and suddenly the house feels less empty, the wound less raw. You stroll by the river and overhear two boys trading advice. If you want her back, write her a song, says one, or just show up with bread, the other shrugs. There's a sweet, bumbling hopefulness to their schemes. Even here, even now, heartbreak is followed by stubborn optimism. A quirky tidbit: ancient Egyptians had rituals for heartbreak, some practical, some magical. After a breakup, friends might burn old love notes, or at least dunk them in the Nile, then treat the wounded party to a festival, a fresh haircut, or a wild night of dancing. More dramatic souls might call on a local magician to brew a charm for forgetting, or if feeling vengeful, a tiny doll to encourage the ex to move on. You're told with a wink that such charms were as likely to bring laughter as closure. Historians still debate whether these rituals actually healed hearts or just gave everyone something to talk about until the next scandal. By evening, a sense of calm has returned to the city. Lanterns flicker, music drifts over the rooftops, and slowly, people find their way back together. You watch as one couple recently quarreling sits beneath a sycamore quietly sharing bread. Words come slowly, then smiles, then the easy touch of forgiveness. Another couple once inseparable walks different paths, home heads high. Not every love story lasts forever, but each one leaves a mark, a lesson, a new way of seeing the world. Back at home, you join Tia in the courtyard. She passes you a cup of sweet beer, her hand warm on yours. People fight, people cry, people start over, she says, voice soft. The river always flows. You sit together in the cool evening, letting go of old heartaches, holding on to the gentle comfort of the present. As you drift toward sleep, you realize ancient Egypt's breakups, heartaches, and messy dramas are never truly endings, just pauses, pivots, or beginnings in disguise. Even the deepest sorrow is softened by family friends and the unwavering hope that new love, new joy is waiting just around the bend. You drift awake to the faint scent of incense curling beneath the doorway, the gentle brush of dawn against your face. The city is quieter today, almost reverent, as if holding its breath for something mysterious and unseen. You sense that love in ancient Egypt isn't just about hearts, flowers, and public drama. It's bound up in magic ritual and the promise that what matters most can outlast even death. Here, romance stretches far beyond a lifetime, winding through charms, talismans, and the shadowy corridors of the afterlife. The first thing you notice is Tia's small amulet glinting on the table, a glazed blue scarab shaped like a heart. She fastens it to your tunic with a sly smile. For protection, she says, and maybe just a little extra luck. Egyptians took such tokens seriously. Lovers exchanged beads, rings, and carved stones, each believed to carry a blessing or shield against envy. Some wore tiny figurines of Hathor or Bez gods of joy and protection, while others tied scraps of linen with whispered spells for fidelity and affection. Historians still argue whether these amulets truly held power or simply gave anxious hearts a reason to hope. Down at the riverbank, a group of young women weaves papyrus charms, their fingers nimble as they knot reeds into secret shapes. Each amulet is unique, some to attract new love, some to heal a broken heart, others to inspire a distant beloved to write, or at least to show up on time. One girl slips a ring of braided grass onto her finger, closing her eyes in silent prayer. Another tucks a love spell into her sash, glancing hopefully at a fisherman hauling nets nearby. A little farther on, you pass a priestess of Hathor preparing a small shrine. She murmurs blessings, scattering petals, then lights a cone of kafi incense, its smoke rising in a sweet spiral toward the open sky. She pours out a sip of wine for hearts that long for those who are lost for joy, yet to come, and offers a honey cake shaped like a dove. You can't help but smile. Romance here is part celebration, part supplication, always tinged with the mystery of what lies beyond sight. A mainstream historical fact, love and magic were intimately entwined in Egyptian life. Temples sold charms and papyrus spells for nearly every romantic purpose, winning affection, mending quarrels, or even inspiring beautiful dreams of a future together. Some lovers commissioned statues or stelae inscribed with prayers, while others relied on handwritten spells folded and tucked beneath the mattress. One famous spell promised to bind the heart of the beloved, while another warned rivals to look elsewhere or face the wrath of the gods. Historians still argue whether the most effective magic was the one you truly believed. As you walk the city's winding lanes, you catch snatches of whispered tales, stories of midnight rituals, secret blessings, and promises carried on the night wind. Some say the moon itself listens to lovers' wishes, carrying them to Osiris in the afterlife, where the heart is weighed against a feather. Couples visit shrines together, leaving garlands and amulets for the gods, hoping their love will be judged pure and everlasting. Sometimes, when a relationship ends, friends gather to help unbind the old spell, burning old tokens, washing names from pottery shards, and setting them afloat on the Nile. Let the river carry it away, Tia's aunt explains, tying a faded ribbon to a drifting reed. And may your heart be lighter tomorrow. In the home, magic is woven into daily rituals. Couples share honey for sweetness, sprinkle salt at the threshold for luck, and trace tiny symbols on each other's palms before bed. On festival days, they join hands and leap over a line of flower petals, a playful pledge of fidelity and a wish for many joyful seasons. If you listen, you'll hear grandmothers muttering protective charms over newborns, or see an uncle scribbling a silly poem on a charm to ward off stubbornness. It works about as well as you'd expect, but no one says so out loud. A quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians believed that if you dreamed of your beloved, it was a sign from the gods, or occasionally the result of eating too much fish before bed. To ensure romantic dreams, some placed little satchels of herbs or scraps of blue lotus under their pillow. If that failed, there was always the classic backup, more honey wine, and another round of festival dancing. As dusk falls, you follow Tia to the cemetery at the city's edge, a peaceful field dotted with low stone tombs and blooming wildflowers. Here, families gather to honor their ancestors, sharing stories of love that endured through hardship, distance, even death. You lay a garland of papyrus flowers on a grave, whispering gratitude for the blessings handed down through generations. The evening air is thick with incense and memory, every shadow touched by the hope that love, woven with magic faith and a pinch of superstition, will last beyond the body, beyond the Nile, beyond the stars themselves. As you return home beneath the wide, star-drenched sky, you're struck by how naturally magic weaves through Egyptian romance. Amulets and spells, honey cakes, and moonlit wishes, each is a thread in the fabric of a love story that stretches from this world into the next. You tuck your scarab amulet close to your heart, and just for a moment you believe love once sparked is truly eternal. You wake slowly, the night's last shadows retreating across the mud brick walls. The first rays of sun spill golden over the Nile, shimmering on its gentle surface and painting every palm, every rooftop, every sleepy face with the promise of a new day. There's a hush that comes with dawn, a softness that makes everything feel possible. This is the hour when the city sleeps its deepest, and those who are awake savor the rare quiet hearts, still echoing with dreams of love. You roll off your mat and pad to the doorway, feeling the coolness of the clay under your feet. Outside, the world glimmers. The river moves lazily, boats bobbing at their moorings, while the air is alive with the distant coo of doves and the flutter of ibis wings. You watch as the city stirs, a baker's lamp flickers on, a fisherman hums to himself as he mends a net, And a girl, maybe the same one who once gifted you a garland of papyrus flowers, sits by the water's edge, trailing her fingers in the current. You realize that the romance of ancient Egypt isn't just in its legends, rituals, or festivals, but in these soft, unguarded moments of life, shared in the light of the rising sun. In the sleepy warmth, you remember the first Nile nights, the blue lotus canoes, the laughter in moonlit courtyards, the perfume and garlands and playful games. You remember the scribes with their sappy songs, the bustling markets filled with secret glances and half-whispered jokes, the clumsy proposals over onions and honey cakes. Every scene, every scent, every song drifts through your memory like a lantern floating gently down the river. This morning, couples sit together in the hush sharing bread or stories fingers entwined. Some talk quietly about hopes for the coming day. Others just savor the silence. There are no grand declarations now, no bargains or secrets to be traded, only the contentment that comes with having someone by your side as the world awakens. You catch sight of an older couple stooped with years, but smiling in the way only lifelong companions can. He brushes a crumb from her shoulder. She adjusts his scarf. It's these gentle gestures repeated for decades that make you realize romance doesn't end with youth or drama. It deepens roots itself and blossoms quietly beneath the surface like the papyrus in the riverbank. A mainstream historical fact to cradle you as you drift, Egyptians believed that love could persist into the afterlife, with spouses reunited in fields of plenty. Tomb paintings show couples embracing sharing wine and picking lilies together under an eternal sky. Historians still argue whether these images reflect real hopes or just poetic wishful thinking, but the longing for togetherness is unmistakable. There are still new stories beginning too. Along the banks, a shy boy offers a lotus bud to a girl who giggles, and then, after a long, suspenseful pause, accepts. A pair of newlyweds walks hand in hand, bare feet, in the dew, whispering plans for their first meal in their shared home. In a corner, someone writes a poem on a pottery shard and leaves it by a friend's door, a simple, clumsy, perfect gesture of hope. The world brightens. The Nile gleams, birds rise in raucous flocks, and your heart feels impossibly light. You find yourself humming a song half remembered from a festival long ago, a song about patience, laughter, onions, and love's slow, unstoppable tide. You realize that as the sun rises, it doesn't just illuminate the city. It reveals every hidden corner of your journey, every fleeting moment that stitched together the tapestry of romance in ancient Egypt. At last, you settle back onto your mat, the night's chill giving way to gentle warmth. You feel safe, content, and just a little wistful. The city comes to life around you, friends calling greetings, lovers meeting in doorways, cats stretching in the sun. The Nile moves on, carrying your story with it. And now, let the morning air soften your breath, the last echoes of night cradle your heart, and the slow golden light ease you toward rest. Let your breathing slow and deepen every inhale, as gentle as the rippling Nile at dawn. The world outside grows distant, blurred by the golden hush that always follows a night of dreaming. The city's chatter fades, and the warm air, scented faintly with river water and wild flowers, slips quietly through your window. With each exhale, you release the last worries of the day, letting them drift away like petals on the river. Imagine now the sun rising over Memphis, the ancient houses aglow, the palms casting long, tranquil shadows, the whole city painted with the promise of a peaceful day. In this soft new light, the worries and dramas of love, every anxious glance, every secret letter, every giggle in the dark grow distant and gentle. All that remains is a feeling of deep safety, the kind you find lying side by side in the warm comfort of home. You remember the gentle cadence of lovers' voices, the quiet kindness of daily rituals, and the certainty that even in a world full of chaos and surprise, there is a steady, unbreakable thread of affection running through it all. The Nile continues its patient journey, ancient and enduring, carrying every love story, yours included, into the tranquil eternity of morning. Let your eyelids grow heavy. Let your thoughts drift with the current, slow and soft. You are safe held in a world as old as dreams, where every whisper of love echoes gently on the water, and every sunrise brings the hope of a new beginning. Good night, dreamer. Sleep easy and let the story carry you softly into morning.